I want to talk to you today about a problem I ran into on my John Deere A. It's a 1948, serial number 611611. It pretty much the same with several John Deeres in that time frame earlier and up to 1950, I believe. The problem that I ran into is the clutch would not snap forward, and I would end up holding the clutch to make it move, but it wouldn't pull and it wouldn't snap into place. So I turned this pulley, and when I turned it, I heard a rattling sound inside of here. It turned out that these, after I got it apart, I noticed these were no longer in between here and this part, which goes here. They had fallen out and was rattling around. And the reason they did is because this centerpiece rotated and they jumped out of place. If you can see what happens there, that hole, the socket area, is no longer lined up with the pawl. The reason for that is originally John Deere used a pin like this, and they pressed it into the pulley and it fit up inside a hole in this hub. Well, what mine did is it would work its way up in the pulley, the hub, and away from the pulley, and then it was no longer in contact with the pulley, and this would rotate. So I'm going to show you a fix that I came up with, and hopefully it'll work for you. I first want to show you another John Deere that I've got here with the stud perfectly in place. It's not loose, and this can be observed through the actual clutch disc, pressing on it with a screwdriver to make sure it's solidly in place. In order to remove the pulley, it is required that you pull the clutch plate off, or clutch disc, I think is what it's called. Here is my old one. I ended up having to break it off and then pull the hub, split the hub and pull it off. It was brutal. This thing's been sitting outside for a lot of years. There's a new one with my new clutch plates when I get ready to install them. This is what your stud should look like if it's all in good shape. You notice that it's got no sign of being loose. This can be observed through the actual clutch disc. I'm going to show you what it looks like if you line the pulley with the clutch disc so that you can look through it and see the actual guide pin. And with a screwdriver, you can actually tell whether that is free or it's solidly in place. In order to get at this hub and the pin and all, this gear must be pulled off. Well, there is no way I could get it off without cutting it, so we used a cutting torch, carefully blocked the bottom here so that the sparks and heat did not damage this hub. Burned through enough and put a puller on it, my 3-ton puller down there, and we were able to get it off. I ordered a new one, and there's my new one when I get ready to assemble. After the gear is removed, that snap ring right there needs to be taken off. It's quite a tough spring, so you have to get screwdrivers under it, slide it off, and then you can pull this hub. This hub is turned over, of course, but what I'm going to show you is this hole was where this pin initially was. This is the pin that fit down in there, and mine would disappear, basically, or get close to it. The fix for this, I think, is going to be to have this bolt, which is a 9/16 18 thread. It's a grade 5, I believe. It's a hardened bolt. And drill and tap. It probably won't even have to drill, but you have to tap it for 9/16 18 thread. Okay, Once that's done, this bolt can be put in place, turned down, and then I'll use my Dremel tool to cut it off. I've got a starter mark on it, so I know I want to extend about 1 inch of that bolt above the threads. A little bit more is okay as long as you got enough space down in here. You've drilled this deep enough. This you drill with I ended up using a 5/8 drill bit to drill this out. It still fits quite nicely on the bolt. I had another one that I cut the head off. Anyway, this right here, I'm going to go ahead and assemble it, put this bolt in place, and then we'll get back. I put red Loctite on the threads of this bolt, turned it in tight against the bottom here with all the threads disappearing and actually bottoming out in there. Now it's important that we don't leave this too long. The back side of that bolt, front side if you want to call it that, we'll have to clear the clutch disc, the metal plate the one I showed you that turns around on the crankshaft. So if this is extended out too far, and about a 1/2 inch or more probably before it would hit. So keep that fairly short, and I'm going to go ahead and use my Dremel tool. I've got a partial cut back here. I'm going to finish it off with the Dremel tool. Be right back. Okay, so there we go. We got the head cut off of it with my Dremel tool. There's the head of that bolt. And now this device, this collar, or whatever it's called, will go down on here. I don't know if I can do it with one hand without pinch my fingers. And when I rotate it, it drops down over that stud. Now, there's very little movement here because it fits over that stud, but there still allows movement. Now, what I want to point out is when you raise this up, normally this is in the lever forward lock position and engaged. If I pull it up high enough, sorry about this guys, so that it's off the stud, you'll see that ring is no longer there. The slot for this here, which means that is a good thing because it can't come off of that stud. When I rotate it over there and it drops, this ring will go there and keep it from going any higher. Of course, the gear will be pressed on above this. So my next project, in any order, is to put the snap ring on, or I can go ahead and put the pawls in, it doesn't matter, but probably do the snap ring and take it over to the press and press on the gear. Now I've got a 20-ton press, and it'll press it on. I'd use just a little bit of liquid on there to make it go down a little bit easier. It takes all the pressure that poor press has got. So the next move will be to put this ring on. Now I want to say something about this ring. If you put it like this and leave that over the gap, over where the key goes, the key can actually slip down here and prevent this from coming up high enough, if you follow me. So when you put this ring on, put it anywhere but open over the key. In other words, not this, but anything else. Any other rotation is fine. Just want to point that out because if that key slips down, there's a little bit of key slot down here, and if it gets down in here, it'll keep this collar from moving. All right? Okay, the gear is on. You can see that it lines up evenly with the surface of the pulley tube, and that the key is in and flat here and down to the snap ring that we talked about earlier. Now, how this works, in case you were wondering, those rods, these are rods right here. I don't have the keys in them, but it has a key and the rest of it, because you can get plenty of videos about that on the internet. But it's this mechanism, when you pull back on the lever, this column goes up. Okay, so the hub is up right now, and you see the poles are relaxed, and that rod went down slightly. So when it's engaged, they go that way. They actually go a little bit over center. If you look at that dog bone, if we want to call it that, it goes over center, and that's what causes the lever to snap into place. So if this cone, or whatever you want to call it, can't move because that stud has come out and this has turned, and the poles have either fallen out or binding, then this won't go up and down properly. Since we're on that stud that we built and threaded into the pulley, this cannot move as far as rotation. So if it doesn't rotate, those poles can't get in a bind and can't fall out. The rest of the installation of this is all over the internet, and you guys can handle it from here. So hopefully that'll help you in a bind where your lever doesn't latch forward and your hub is not lined up with the pulley anymore. Thank you. Don't forget to like the movie and add any comments you might come up with. Thank you.